Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Good to have you here. Good that the platform seems to be working this morning. To those of you who were here with us yesterday, thank you so much for your patience. The problem, it turned out, was a bug with the platform. They'd made an update and then it had a few knock-on effects that hadn't been expected. So they fixed that bug now and everything seems to be working. So welcome, and we hope that the session runs smoothly. Everything seems okay so far. Just to give you all a quick update on Martin as well. I know a lot of you have been asking. We don't have that much information. We know that he's still very weak, but he says that he's stable. So we're not sure when he'll be back with us at the moment. But yeah, he's still resting and recovering. So just a couple of quick words before we start. We will be live with you for the next hour, starting with 10 or 15 minutes of Dharma talk. Then Kaira, who's kindly still sitting in for Martin this week, will be leading a Dharma talk. And then we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end, which is your opportunity to ask questions. If you'd like to ask a question, we can try and bring you live on screen, but I know that that's something else that seems to be a bit buggy at the moment. So if you'd like to come on, please do write a message in the chat bar and I will try and bring you on and we can see if that works. But if it doesn't work, or if you would prefer to put your question to Kaira in writing, you can just click on the Ask a Question button right underneath the video there. And there'll be an orange button that pops up and you can put your question in there. And the other thing I would like to mention is donations or dana. We gladly offer these sessions freely every day, but we do have ongoing running costs that we need to meet in order to be able to continue doing this. The cost of the platform, the cost of various other bits of software and hosting the website, and many other things that we need to pay for on a regular basis, and we're entirely dependent on your donations to be able to do that. So if you are able to donate anything at all, we would be very grateful. Again, there's a button underneath the video screen. It's really easy to donate. Just click on that green button and it will give you a few options to do that. So thank you all in advance for that. So I'm going to take myself off now and hand over to Kaira.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and really good to be with you all again today. So welcome and good morning to you all. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Today I'll be speaking about the power of the mind, and especially intention or volition. So I listened to a Dharma talk by a venerable Thich Dongdrub, a Tibetan monk, on the potential of mind. I was beginning to speak to this a little yesterday. He shared that the mind is the one thing that doesn't decay and can't be destroyed, unlike so many other things that are impermanent, that we can't take with us from one life to the next. And it's fine if you don't subscribe to that idea. But he was saying in this talk that the mind is pure, it's powerful, it keeps whatever we invest into it and faithfully returns this investment back to us. That nothing we do to cultivate our mind in the direction of freedom and compassion is ever wasted. So it's like this fifth remembrance that we were looking at. Our actions are the one thing we have. They are never lost, right? So especially cultivating wholesome actions. is a really good thing, because we'll continue. That will be our continuation into the world. So I just want to say something about the word mind I'm using in English. It's in the Buddhist text. The word is citta, citta, but it doesn't just refer to the mind in the Western sense. It's the mind heart. It's our whole psychological, emotional being. So in many Asian traditions, there isn't a distinction between the mind and the heart. It's one thing. So this teaching from this Tibetan monk is really, that we want to use our time wisely to invest in ourselves and in our minds, because that's what continues, right? That the mind is so precious, that our human life is so precious, and that each day we can do something to help the Buddha mind, this mind of awakening, manifest more fully. Especially now in this time of pandemic, where we have to shelter in place or where there's lockdown, it's a very precious opportunity also to cultivate our minds, to invest in our mind, heart, and bodies, in all of our potential, to grow towards awakening. So one thing that's important as we look at cultivating our mind is intention, or volition, or what our deep aspiration is that is guiding our lives. In a sutra on the 4 kinds of nutriments, the Buddha speaks of 4 kinds of food. So there's the food of, edible food and drink that we take in through our mouths. There's the food of the senses, what we take in through our senses, sense impression food, what we see, what we hear, what we smell. Then there's the food of volition, of intention, what it is that drives us, what gets us up in the morning, that makes us go out and do whatever we do. That is our, deep intention. That's sort of the driving force of our life, whether it's, to become whatever profession it is that we want to become, or to study this thing, or to help people in this way, or to, succeed in this particular effort, endeavor. So that's our intention, our volition. That's the 3rd food. And the 4th one is the food of consciousness. So what we're consuming from morning to night is the food of consciousness. All the thoughts that come up from our store consciousness are kind of food. And in each of these 4 kinds of food, the food can be wholesome or not wholesome. And the point of the sutra is to help us pay attention so that we choose nutriments that bring us to healing and wholeness and towards happiness and also freedom, rather than in each of these categories of food, choosing kinds of food that take us into suffering and ill-being. So about the energy, the food of volition, so it's this underlying force that drives our lives, and we need to investigate, where is it taking us? Where is our particular aspiration? What is it, first of all? What is it that motivates us in our lives? And it's important to investigate this, because if we don't, our volition can be taken hostage by the volition of our society, like our collective intention in many cases. If we look at our economic systems in many countries, it's driven by greed. As I was talking about this idea from Satish Kumar, that before the coronavirus, there was the greed virus that was, infecting so much of our planet. So this sense of a collective volition in many societies being to extract as much as possible from the natural world, and to generate a society that doesn't honor the humanity of, quite a good portion of people in that society, in terms of not taking care of people, not providing equal access to basic necessities. This time of pandemic is making these inequalities so much more obvious, right? About who's really vulnerable in our society on a daily basis. Now they're the ones that aren't able to protect themselves from this pandemic. So we want to ask ourselves what our volition is, so that it doesn't get taken over by other volitions that we may not want to subscribe to. Things like needing to succeed, and that being narrowly defined as being materially successful, or being a consumer, or that our only meaning of our life is through our material acquisitions. So I remember Thich Nhat Hanh would often ask us to reflect, what is the ultimate concern of your life? That we really want to be holding that question on a regular basis, checking in to see what is it that really guides us. And if it is in attaining things that don't bring true happiness and freedom, we can always change course. That doesn't have to confine us. We can make a U-turn and we can go in a different direction. And so there's this word and a beautiful energy called bodhicitta. Bodhicitta means the mind of awakening, or the mind-heart of love. It's this aspiration to awaken, to help others wake up. It's, the volition, and someone's asking, what does a volition mean? What does the word mean? It means intention. It means aspiration. It means, this driving energy that pulls us to do things. So, for example, Mahatma Gandhi had a strong volition to bring his country to independence, and he was willing to sacrifice many things to make that happen. And it got him up early in the morning, and he spent lots of time in prayer, lots of time writing, lots of time in meetings, practicing celibacy, to put all of his effort towards bringing independence and health to his country. Nelson Mandela had this volition to free his country from apartheid, and it kept him balanced and gave his mind a focus while he was in prison for 28 years on Robben Island, right? So this volition is this, it's like an inner engine that makes what we do possible. Can you imagine being in prison for 28 years? And he came ready to lead his country as a president. So what kind of inner momentum that keeps us on track, that keeps us focused on this deep desire, deep aspiration that we have. It's what led the Prince Siddhartha on his path of awakening, to benefit countless beings, to go through all sorts of hardships of asceticism, of harming his body, and until he finally realized, no, I need to take this middle path of caring for myself, not indulging, but also not harming my body. People like Harriet Tubman, who risked her life countless times to bring enslaved Africans to freedom. Mother Teresa, bodhicitta is what is motivating thousands of people right now who are committing their lives to help others in this time of pandemic. So bodhicitta can be understood also in this bodhisattva vow. So a bodhisattva is a awakened being. Bodhi is awakened, like in bodhicitta, awakened mind. Bodhisattva is an awakened being, or a being that's, committing their lives to awaken. So for a bodhisattva, their deep volition, their deep aspiration is to wake up themselves and help all other beings wake up. So this is a version of the Bodhisattva vow from the Mahayana tradition, and it consists of four elements, so 4 statements. And this is just one version, one translation from the Japanese Zen tradition. It says, "The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. I vow to realize these Dharma gates, these pathways into the Dharma." And the 4th one is, "The Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully." I'll put these 4 in the chat. So this is an example of a kind of very powerful volition that can bring us a great deal of energy, a great deal of resolve to do things that we might not otherwise be able to do if we didn't have this deep aspiration. So that's why it's so important to get clear. What is it that's driving us in our lives? Not only for our own life, but also how we see that in the collective, because we have a collective volition, as I mentioned, and we can contribute to the collective volition, the collective aspiration, through getting our own, getting clearer and connected to our own individual aspiration. And I just want to say something about the importance of looking at how we use intention. I have a dear friend, Sophie Banks, who was part of the Transition Town movement that started in Totnes, Devon, United Kingdom. We taught together regularly at Schumacher College in that part of England. And she tells a beautiful story of how they began with the Transition Town movement. When they got together, these were activists, people who cared about the environment, about 15, maybe 20 years ago. When they first got together, they focused on all the things that were wrong, that they didn't want to happen in their communities anymore, like, so much dependence on fossil fuels and inefficient, insulation and architecture of homes that led to a lot of waste of energy, and the unhelpful, damaging ways of growing food, and transportation that was wasteful and polluting. So they were focusing on all these things that they didn't want. And she said they lost their energy very quickly. They felt very drained, very burned out when they were focusing on all that was wrong. But then when they decided to focus on what they did want, what they wanted to see in their society, it was completely different. They had a lot more energy. So that's what bodhicitta is. It's like deciding what we do want. It gives us a way to direct our energy to feel this trajectory of our life, taking us where we want to go. So there's a beautiful line from the sutras in the Plum Village tradition that says, "Once I have a path, I have nothing more to fear." And this is really huge, to know that we have a path to walk on, that we can trust, that we can take refuge in, that we have faith in. And it not only gives us tremendous energy to work for the well-being of all beings, but also gives us this, it removes our fear. It gives us non-fear. It gives us a direction. So I think this time of pandemic, of being very limited in our social movement, our ability to move about, it can also give us space for visioning how things might be different. How, what do we really want to see in our societies? It's an amazing time and precious opportunity to reassess how we're living, to not, be so limited in our imaginations that we want to just go back to the way things were, which actually wasn't very normal, in that, so many people were left vulnerable and unsupported. So I want us to do a practice now, a guided meditation that will give us an opportunity first to come home to ourselves, to rest in ourselves, and then to also touch our deeper aspirations. That'll be a kind of last part of this practice. So I invite you to just take your seat wherever you are. It can be taking your stand. I have a water truck coming by. In our little village in Anuradhapura, little small town, there's delivery trucks coming by to bring different services. So yes, if you're standing, take your stance. If you're lying, take your lying down position, but really occupy this moment. Really let yourself arrive here, wherever you are in your body. And if there are parts of yourself that are somewhere else, in some other time, past or future, or some other place, just inviting all of those parts of yourself to come back, to settle, to be here together with this wonderful community of practitioners, and to be in this moment, right here, now. Feeling the contact between your body and whatever you're making contact with. The soles of your feet or your legs. Really knowing that you're on the earth. The earth is supporting you. If you like, you can visualize sending roots down into the earth, really stabilizing yourself in the earth, getting support from the earth, connecting to the earth. It's this way of committing to stay right here, not going anywhere else. And really knowing that the earth is supporting you in this moment. So you can especially ground down to the earth through your lower body. And if you're seated or standing with your upper body, just let yourself reach up towards the sky, like a tree, stretching, extending, growing taller, this sense of spaciousness in connection to the immensity of the sky. And opening to this vast and immeasurable sky. So feeling the aliveness, the vitality in this moment. around the structure of rooting down and growing up tall, allowing the muscles of the body to release and soften around the strength of the bones of the spine. If it's helpful, you can connect to the breath, letting the breath support you as you exhale in releasing tension. Allowing the muscles of the face to soften over the skull. Allowing the eyes to rest in their sockets. And the muscles on the forehead to spread. Allowing space between the upper and lower rows of teeth. And then the tongue just gets to rest on the floor of the mouth. And the jaw can also soften and release. Bringing attention to the shoulders, the arms, and the hands. Letting them take the most easeful position that they can. Bringing attention to the chest and the belly and letting go of holding there any resistance if it wants to go. If it doesn't, we accept that. And touching into the back and releasing there whatever wants to release down the back. No forcing. And letting a softening happen in the hips and the pelvis, down the legs and the feet. And opening to the natural flow of the in-breath and the out-breath. Noticing how the breath arrives all by itself as you breathe in, and how the out-breath just does what it does very naturally as you breathe out. If you like, you can just take a deep inhale and a long, full exhale. You can do that a couple times if it felt good to you. As we let the body settle, we can also begin to let the breath settle. And now just breathing normally. And if you find it useful, noticing in as you breathe in and out as you breathe out. Nothing to do but dwell with this experience of breathing in and breathing out. Resting in our breathing. As you breathe in, bringing awareness to the body, the whole body. As you breathe out, allowing the body to rest, calming the body, aware of the body, calming, resting. Breathing in touch with the present moment. Breathing out, touching the preciousness of this moment. There's nowhere else but here. There's no other time but now. This moment will never come again, and it has never come before. This is the moment when life is truly available. With the inhale touching the present moment, with the exhale touching the preciousness of this moment. And if there are difficult feelings present in us, it may not be easy or even appropriate to try to experience the preciousness of this moment, because it might be overwhelming. And if that's the case for you, as much as you can, making space for what's here, breathing into your body to help create more space for whatever painful feeling might be here. Not pushing it away. Could also be helpful to find some part of your experience that is neutral in your body or even in your mind. And let your mind focus on what isn't wrong in this moment. A part of the body that feels okay, or bringing to mind something positive, something of good that's happened in your life. Resourcing ourselves. And if you notice your mind wandering into thinking or planning or worrying, just noticing this is happening, acknowledging the thoughts. You can engage with them later, but for now, connecting with the breath, with the body, with the experience of this moment, just as it is. Feeling into the awareness that this moment is enough. That what we need, it's already here. As we breathe in, we can connect with a sense of enoughness, of contentment. As we exhale, accepting that life is as it is in this moment. Connecting with the fact that things are okay right here, right now. You don't need anything more. And accepting how things are. Opening to how things are just as they are. Breathing in enoughness. Breathing out acceptance. So as we breathe, also touching in to sense what our deep aspiration is. What is our deep wish that we want to realize in our lives? What do we want to bring about for ourselves, for others, for our community, our society? Maybe some wish for well-being, for ease, for connection or harmony. So even as we dwell in the fullness of what is, right here and now, we also can be in touch with our energy and our vision for what we want to manifest, the good we wish to be part of bringing into the world. Touching into that as a source of energy. Breathing in a sense of your own good heart and the love you wish to express. Breathing out, encouraging, supporting, honoring this energy of bodhicitta, of awakening. Touching your goodness, your deep aspiration, and honoring, supporting, celebrating this. What is it that you, who are unique in all the world, have to bring, have to offer? Touch the truth of your own power, your own capacity to contribute, to be a bodhisattva, bringing awakening to yourself and to others. The many beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly. I vow to abandon them. Dharma gates are countless. I vow to wake to them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to embody it fully. Letting these vows settle in you, enliven you, radiate within you. connecting with this energy of bodhicitta, the mind of awakening, the mind of love. It's a fragrance. It's a very wonderful perfume that we each radiate like a human flower. And this flower wants to share itself with the world. So as we close our practice, letting this beautiful human flower that is you blossom open a little more, letting this fragrance of bodhicitta float out into the world. Offering the beauty of our aspirations into the space and beyond for the benefit of all beings. So thank you for your practice. You can gently return to the screen, opening your eyes if you have them closed, whatever stretching you'd like to do, doing that. Thank you. And there's now time for questions. And there's a question. So there's a question about the path, what to do when the problem is precisely that we don't seem to find what we really want. So when we have trouble discerning what our volition is, what our path is. Thank you for that question. I think it's important to be seeking a path, to know that we want a path, and that our heart's longing is to find what it is that we are especially here to do, or to, not even to do, but to be, right? So one practice that I find very helpful from Thai is when we have a question like that, like what is my actual deep aspiration? What is it that I really want my life to be about? We can see that as a seed, and we plant that seed in the depths of our mind, down in the soil of our mind. So it's not something that we try to think our way through up in the upper level of our mind, because thinking won't help us find the answer. We let it rest down in the soil of our mind, and then what we do to cultivate that seed is we practice in our daily lives. We practice awareness, mindfulness throughout the day. Whatever we're doing, as much as possible, we try to know that's what we're doing. So if we're drinking tea, we have some awareness that we're drinking tea. Our mind isn't completely pulled away into some other place. If we're sweeping the floor, we know we're sweeping the floor. If we're talking to someone, we know we're talking to someone. If we're rushing, trying to meet a deadline, we know we're rushing. So whatever it is, we try to know what we're doing. And that daily mindfulness practice in all of our activities is a kind of rain that nurtures that seed, and it's a kind of sun that warms the seed until one day, and we don't know when, that seed will sprout up, and we'll know what our path is, what our deep aspiration is. So it's a practice of having faith and having trust in life, that we will it will be revealed to us. But we can't get there through thinking, but through nourishing this precious, precious seed of a question down in the depths of our mind, through daily, the basic practices, mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful breathing, practicing with others. Yeah, thank you for the question. Could you please talk about the gap that I feel between my intention and the action I do take or not take, therefore finding it difficult to make the intention concrete? How to close that gap? Thank you for this question. We want to be gentle and kind with ourselves. We are on a path, and it's called mindfulness practice. Practice, I'm emphasizing for a reason, because it's not mindfulness perfect. It's something we want to practice, and that takes time to cultivate, and we don't expect to arrive at our intention immediately, but we can always make steps towards that intention. I know when I was early on in my life as a nun, I had a very unrealistic expectation that I should be mindful 24 hours a day, and I got very despondent and even depressed when I couldn't be mindful from morning till night like I thought I was supposed to. So I had this gap between what my intention was and what I was able to do. And what really helped me was letting go of the expectation that I should do this perfectly. And when I simply accepted that I'm doing the best I can, I'm being as mindful as I can during my day, and there are moments when I won't be able to be mindful. When I relaxed and just accepted, I'm learning, I'm a work in progress. That helped immensely when I let go of this heavy burden on myself of perfection. I let myself be as I was, and I found, interestingly enough, that I became more mindful quite effortlessly. Like I started to enjoy my practice more, and I started to be kinder to myself. And then the things that I hadn't been able to do before were just coming more naturally. I was enjoying, rather than trying to make myself be mindful. Mindfulness would just arise more without a lot of effort. It wasn't like a shift from night, it wasn't an immediate shift, but I noticed as soon as I stopped being so heavy, I have to do this, and this, in this way, I have to be here. When I just let that go, the aspiration was still to be mindful as much as possible, but it didn't have this big expectation and judgment and trying to measure anything. When I let go of trying to measure my progress, that was huge. And then I feel like I started to make a lot more progress, paradoxically. So I think letting go in this case is really important to your question. So thank you. I will let people know. Caroline has asked if I could let people know that Martin is still weak but stable for those who are joining the call later. And Martin also advises everyone to abandon worry about him or anything else. It doesn't achieve anything. Instead, cultivate love, responsiveness, and non-clinging. What a beautiful message, to abandon worry. So we just hold Martin in this moment in our hearts, smiling to him, wishing him well, releasing our expectations and demands, just holding him in our love and our deepest wish for his healing and well-being, with a heart of freedom, of non-clinging. And it's so beautiful to sense all the love that's here in this group for Martin. So we just offer that to him. We let that radiate out to embrace him. Thank you for that powerful message, Martin, and for your teaching. Someone asks, could you please talk more about the 4 foods, the 4 nutriments? Sure. Maybe in connection to this talk, I hope you all know that each of these talks are recorded, and underneath some we have links with information that I've mentioned in the talk. So we'll put a link to the Sutra on the 4 nutriments for those that would like to read about it. But it's a really wonderful teaching about noticing, that whatever we feed will grow in us. So we want to take good care to take in the foods that really support us to be well, and we want to take in the foods that will support us in the direction of our bodhicitta, right? So think of the sense impression food. That's the second kind of food. It's very important to be aware of what we're consuming, especially now when we're stuck at home on a home retreat. Are we spending hours and hours reading the news? Is that wholesome sense impression food? Listening to the news, reading the news. It's important to be informed, and it's important to let our heart be touched by what's happening in the world, and to stay up to date so we can protect ourselves and our loved ones. But we need to discern. It's said that we need to put a guard at the gate of each of our 5 senses, our sight, our hearing, our touch, our smell, and our tasting. We need to put a guard at each of those sense doors to see, is what's coming in going to be helpful for me? Is it going to water the seeds I want to have watered? And if not, we shouldn't take in that food as much as possible. So, are we taking in, healthy sense impression food that will support our bodhicitta or not? So there's much more to say about the other nutriments as well, but that's the general practice, is to really look and see, what am I taking in, and what is it nourishing in me, and is this helpful? And if not, maybe I can make other choices. And sometimes it's hard to see how those things are affecting us. Sometimes the connection isn't always so clear. But I have a friend, for example, she would look at the fashion magazines that are always there when you check out in the grocery store. She would look through them, and she noticed after, it took her maybe a little while, but because she was practicing mindfulness, she noticed whenever she looked at those fashion magazines, she felt bad about her body image. And so she decided not to look at those magazines anymore. She could nourish herself with a more wholesome sense impression food. And I heard a couple that used to come to our center in Germany, the European Institute of Applied Buddhism, where I used to live as a nun. They came and they said, they used to read the paper every day, the whole newspaper every day. And they noticed that it made them feel depressed. And they said with mindfulness, they decided to read it once a week, and they felt that was enough to keep on top of the main events, and that they didn't feel that depression from taking in that sense impression food every day. So I think we need to close soon. Let's see if I can do one more question. Please, could you speak about when volition seems to get stuck in one place? I notice at this time of spending all my time all my time parenting my one child that it feels harder to be in touch with the wider, deeper volitions of others when there is worry and over-focus on my daughter? Thank you for this question. I think that's probably a very common experience, especially in this time. I think it's probably the case that nurturing your daughter is a very important volition or intention, aspiration. And now when it's, just you and her, or maybe other people in the family, but where you're at home together all day long, maybe you don't get a chance to be in touch with the other things that also are important to you. And so there's maybe a tendency to worry too much or over focus. And it's important to notice that, which you're doing very well, and to see what will really nourish her, because sometimes what we wish for our loved ones isn't actually what they need. So just like Martin was saying, worry doesn't help him if we worry about him. Worrying about your daughter may not be the best way to fulfill your deep aspiration to love her and guide her and protect her. So whenever worry arises in you, recognizing that, saying its name, hello worry, I see that you're here. Bringing mindfulness to be there with your worry so that it doesn't take you over and you don't completely identify with it. And as much as you can, taking time to get curious and interested in your worry. What is it saying? What is it telling you that will happen if you don't do this particular thing? Or if you don't overdo and over focus on your daughter. What is worry saying? And really listen to that and see is that true? Is that really the case? And maybe consciously bringing in other things to put your attention on, and maybe having a conversation. I don't know how old your daughter is, but maybe even sharing in some age appropriate way with her about, what she feels would be helpful for her in terms of how much time and energy you put. And maybe she'd like some more space where she doesn't want you to worry and fuss over her in a way that takes away her space. So maybe there are ways where you can do something and she can do something. You could be side by side, but you don't have to be focused on each other or you focused on her. So maybe there are activities you can do together that increase this sense of space and respect and, letting her be who she is and you be who you are. So I don't know the situation well enough to really speak more detailed, but I hope that's helpful. So it's lovely to be with each of you today. We'll close our session and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And just want to close by dedicating the beautiful bodhicitta that's here in each of us. May it float out into the cosmos and create conditions for awakening for ourselves and for all beings. Be well.